Audiobook, Steps Towards Your Literary Dream. A Practical Guide to Writing and Publishing Your Book. By Milco Baute. A course prepared with all the tools needed to write and publish literary works. Written and published in 2024. Introduction. Welcome to Steps Towards Your Literary Dream, a practical guide to writing and publishing your book. This book is designed to be your companion on the exciting and challenging journey of turning your dream of writing and publishing a book into a tangible reality. Have you ever felt the burning passion of a story you long to share with the world but found yourself overwhelmed by the vastness of the writing and publishing process? Have you wondered how to start, what steps to take, or how to face the inevitable obstacles along the way? If so, you are in the right place. This book is made for you, whether you are a complete beginner with a revolutionary idea or an amateur writer looking to take your skills to the next level. Here, we will break down the process into clear and achievable steps, from the conception of your idea to the moment you hold your published book in your hands. Throughout these pages, we will explore writing techniques, strategies to overcome creative blocks, practical advice for refining your work, guidance on finding the right publishing path for you, and much more. Additionally, I will share my experience and accumulated knowledge as a writer and editor, with the hope of smoothing your path to literary success. Remember, every great literary work began with a single step. This book will guide you through those steps, inspire you to keep going when doubts arise, and constantly remind you that your literary dream is within reach. I am excited to embark on this journey with you toward the fulfillment of your dream. Let's start writing your story. Advice for new or amateur authors. The first thing a writer or aspiring author should know is how to express themselves, as speaking and writing are not the same. You do not necessarily need to be a grammar expert in your language, but the more you know, the better. Conveying a message can be challenging for some because they struggle to find the exact words. However, if you are an avid or passionate reader, writing and communicating your message will come more easily. Everything we express is a product of what we have previously learned. We repeat what we know, and we know it because we have seen it many times before. You may have a colloquial way of speaking, and that is acceptable in literature as long as basic grammatical rules and structures are followed. You do not need an extensive vocabulary or complex phrasing. Instead, by using simple words in an elegant and correct order, you will be better understood. Some people are drawn to poetic writers because they find rhythm and sophisticated vocabulary intriguing. However, others with less literary or linguistic knowledge prefer a more common, simple, and understandable language, as they do not want to constantly look up words in a dictionary just to understand a text. I have learned to write by writing. Although I have always loved literature, over time, I have expanded my vocabulary, improved my grammar in both Spanish and English, and refined my spelling. Of course, for basic grammar and spelling, Microsoft Word is a helpful tool, as it corrects what we write in our language. However, it does not catch every mistake, especially accentuation errors. Even though I have improved my writing and expression, I still prefer to use a simple, more popular, and understandable language, something more journalistic. As I mentioned earlier, I do not write from my imagination but from what I understand, know, and research. I gather information to expand on topics, add references to explain them better, and corroborate everything with solid documentation. I also apply the discernment that God has given me and the revelation of His Word, as my books often have a spiritual perspective. The physical world we live in originates from the spiritual world, and it is impossible to separate one from the other, especially when dealing with philosophical, political, and religious subjects. While people have their own opinions, the truth always leans in a specific direction. Not everyone has to agree with me. I do not claim to own the truth, nor is my truth absolute, but the truth remains the truth, whether anyone believes it or not. That truth is spiritual, of an invisible and eternal nature. However, you may be more imaginative and creative, which means you do not need to write like I do. Perhaps you enjoy storytelling, fictional or fantasy narratives, using metaphors and allegories to convey a message, a lesson, or a reflection. You may prefer prose or verse and have a knack for rhyming, captivating readers with the flow of your story. Or maybe you enjoy suspense, intrigue, double meanings, dialogue-driven narratives, or testimonies. Anything is allowed as long as grammatical rules are followed and the language is comprehensible, even if the plot is intentionally ambiguous in suspenseful works. I will provide you with as much advice as possible, regardless of the writing style you choose, to help you start writing or improve your book's content. My advice will be based more on what I have read than what I have written. Even though I have authored over 30 books, I do not consider myself a writer of all styles. As an editor, I have had the opportunity to read about 50 books from various authors with different styles and professional backgrounds. Among them are pastors, evangelists, teachers, theologians, mental health experts, journalists, poets, professional writers, and others. Some manuscripts require almost no grammatical or spelling corrections, while in other cases, I have practically had to translate Spanish into Spanish, believe it or not. Some authors write so poorly and express themselves so terribly that their message becomes incomprehensible. In other instances, I have had to correct almost every single word, finding errors in every sentence. This shows that these writers have little reading culture and virtually no grammar knowledge. As I mentioned before, speaking and writing are two different things. Some people write exactly as they speak, or even worse. That is why, before embarrassing yourself, you should read a lot before writing a book. Especially, read about the topic or genre you are interested in writing about. With practice, perfection is achieved. If you are unsure about the grammatical quality of your work and want to ensure that readers do not find errors, I suggest hiring an editor. On the second page of this book, you will find my contact information if you wish to reach out. I would be happy to help. However, if you want to save money, purchase or acquire an updated version of Microsoft Word to help you correct errors. Keep in mind that this tool is not 100% effective, so mistakes may still slip through. But do not worry, even Shakespeare had spelling errors and relied on proofreaders. The authors of the Bible also used scribes, who were like editors and literary scholars, to write the books that make up the Holy Scriptures because God is a God of order. It is very important that after finishing your book, you take the time to reread it and resist the urge to publish it immediately. Writers often review chapters or paragraphs as they finish them, but trust me, that is not enough. You must reread the entire book after completing it, as you will inevitably find mistakes you have not noticed before. This is called thorough revision. In my case, I have realized that after publishing a book, receiving a printed copy, and reading it physically, I have found errors or ways to phrase things better than I originally wrote them. This has led me to revise and republish my books. Avoid this inconvenience because if someone else is publishing your book, you will have to pay for revisions. Lastly, when I edit someone else's book, I often have another person read it as well, because they may catch errors I missed. After publication, if an author detects a typo, I fix it immediately and update the book on the self-publishing platform. However, if the error involves content changes, such as modifying a sentence, a biblical reference, or an external quote, then I must charge for that service. Take your time reviewing your work before publishing. Once you format your book into a PDF for self-publishing, read it again, not just the original document. Writers who rush to finish something often make the most mistakes. My writing method. My writing method, which has proven successful to the point that I can write and publish a book in 24 hours, within 3 8-hour writing sessions over 3 days, is simple, and I will explain it here. However, it may not work for everyone since each writer has their own style and narrative approach. If you are a poet, I imagine you wouldn't write 20 or 30 poems for a book in just 3 days, nor would it be easy to create a fiction or fantasy story, a study manual, or a book exceeding 250 pages. However, I can confirm that I have written books of over 200 pages in just 3 days, mainly because I can turn an article I previously wrote into a full book. When I write an article, whether it's a personal opinion, something I learned and understood, or a fictional story that came to mind, I immediately start developing it. I sit down and write what is in my head, letting the words flow. During this process, I think about the best way to express myself and convey my message, making the best use of grammar and vocabulary. I carefully employ prepositions, conjunctions, articles, pronouns, nouns, verbs, and adjectives. The Spanish language is broad and beautiful, offering many ways to say something without resorting to repetition or filler words. It is important to know when to pause using a comma, semicolon, period, or paragraph break. Sometimes repetition is allowed, though it should generally be avoided, like in this very sentence, where I deliberately repeated, for in a row, and you understand why I did it. Punctuation marks are pauses that enhance readability and comprehension. If you continue discussing the same topic, you may use a semicolon or a period, depending on the pause length. If you introduce a different subject, even if it relates to the same event or situation, use a paragraph break. Some people make simple mistakes, such as overusing paragraph breaks, unnecessarily dividing connected ideas. Others excessively use periods within a single paragraph, making it too long and difficult to follow, sometimes spanning an entire page. These choices are relative since there are no strict rules about when to use a period or paragraph break, but the key is to avoid exhausting the reader. However, emphasizing pauses appropriately is crucial. Tips for writing using my method. Start with a title. When you have an idea for something you want to write, think of a title and write it down. This is the best way to begin and serves as the foundation of your book. Create an index or table of contents. After writing the title, list the chapters and topics you want to cover. Do not number the pages yet. Write a preface or introduction. This section should discuss what the reader will find in your book, what it is about, what inspired you to write it, and why you chose this topic. You can also provide a synopsis. Writing the introduction will give you the motivation to continue, and if you don't seize that momentum, it will become harder to pick up later as ideas gradually fade. Personally, I always jot down the titles of books I want to write or ideas I have in mind to ensure I don't forget them. Many times, I start writing a book, pause, and then a new idea comes to me from something I read, heard, or saw. I rush to develop that idea before losing it, often finishing that book before the one I had originally started. The importance of the topic sometimes leads me to prioritize completing a fresher, more compelling idea. I don't plan what I will write each day, I simply follow my inspiration. However, I always note down my ideas and book titles, so I don't forget them later. Save acknowledgments and dedications for later. Although these sections appear at the beginning of a book, write them after you finish the main content. Thinking about whom to thank or dedicate your book can cause distractions, leading to lost ideas. Books are first written in the mind, acknowledgments come after the work is complete, even if they appear at the start. Avoid delaying what is fresh in your mind, as distractions and stress can make you forget your thoughts, making it harder to continue later. I have had authors send me incomplete manuscripts to begin organizing, editing, and structuring their books, only for them to never complete them, even after 2 years. Because of this, I now refuse to start any work until I receive the full manuscript. In fact, some of these authors may never finish their books, and I would have worked for nothing. Meeting the minimum page requirement for a book. A book needs to have at least 50 pages. If you have written only 25 pages, you can expand your book by adding introductory pages, title, author name, blank pages for separation, table of contents, acknowledgments, dedications, preface, and introduction. Chapters should always start on the right-hand page of an open book. If needed, you can also adjust margins, font size, or include images to increase the page count. Additionally, adding a biography, a final note, or a bibliography can help meet the minimum requirement. Another strategy one uses for publishing short books is reducing their physical size to a pocketbook format, for 5 by 6, 5 inches, which still requires a minimum of 50 pages. Since this format is smaller than the standard 6 by 9 inches, the content automatically extends across more pages. Sometimes, I publish two versions of the same book in different sizes so readers can choose the one they prefer. Expanding on a topic. If you only have a short article or reflection and are unsure what else to write, expand on the topic using online references. If it's a fiction story, read similar stories for inspiration. This is similar to preaching a sermon by building upon another's message but presenting it differently and in your own words. However, if you use someone else's work as a reference, always credit the original source in a footnote, chapter note, or bibliography. Formatting dialogue properly. When writing character dialogue, always use a dash after the speaker's name or a colon followed by quotation marks. Each character's dialogue should start on a new line. Do not use continuous sentences within the same paragraph, as it can confuse the reader. Optionally, you can bold the character's name. Example. Mario, I knew you would say that. Alberto, of course, we've known each other for a long time. Reducing the page count without sacrificing readability. If your book is over 100 pages and you don't want it to appear too lengthy, so as not to discourage readers who prefer shorter books, or if you don't want to raise the price, avoid adding spaces between paragraphs. Instead, use an indentation at the beginning of each paragraph. Example. This is an indentation. I move 6 spaces before starting with a capital letter at the beginning of the paragraph. Using indentation instead of paragraph spacing reduces the total page count and improves readability by maintaining a uniform text structure. However, for dialogue, paragraph spacing is still recommended. Additionally, adjusting margins can impact page count. I often use moderate margins for books with images. A narrower margin can make the text more compact, but it remains readable. Formatting your book yourself in Word and converting it to PDF saves time and money instead of hiring a designer. Publishing and revising your book. Some authors release their books in multiple volumes, especially for instructional, course-based, or fiction series. However, splitting a book into several volumes when each part has fewer than 200 pages may not be ideal unless you change the title while maintaining the same subject. If an author wants to expand a book, they can revise and update the original manuscript in Word, convert it to PDF, and re-upload the new version to self-publishing platforms like www.kdp.amazon.com. Start writing today. Even if you can't dedicate 8 hours a day, commit to at least 2 hours. Set aside time for writing and avoid procrastination. Whether it takes 3 days or 3 months, keep writing. Publishing a book today is easier than ever. Plan a schedule, build discipline, and don't focus solely on financial gain, enjoy the process. The greatest reward is leaving a lasting legacy. Correction of grammatical errors. Here, I will provide tips for a more in-depth composition correction. However, if you are unsure about making corrections yourself, seek help from someone knowledgeable, even if they are not a writer, preferably a Spanish teacher. If you do not know anyone, you can search on social media and pay them via PayPal, as I have done. You can also contact me to authors@us.com, and I will gladly assist you. 1. Guidelines for correcting grammatical errors. In a sentence, there should not be more than 2 instances of and. If you need a third one, place a comma before it or replace it with adverbs like besides, even, apart from, on the other hand, more, or use ellipses symbol. Alternatively, you can use a period and continue with another and or another preposition. Each paragraph should follow a clear theme. Sentences should be separated by a period. Try to keep paragraphs short but not just one sentence long. Avoid using 2 but in the same sentence. Instead, use alternatives such as however, still, although, on the other hand, more. Always place a comma before but. The names of people, surnames, titles, cities, and countries always start with a capital letter. Nationalities, professions, subtitles, job positions, political parties, or religious denominations should be written in lowercase. Commas and periods should be placed immediately after the preceding word, with a space before the next word. Example, they know it, but they do not teach it. In a dialogue, use a colon or a dash after the speaker's name. Example. Dora, is that true? If the character's name is not mentioned before their dialogue, start the line with a dash. In other cases, the name can also come after the dialogue. Example. Where are you going? Asked Juan. Make sure verbs and adjectives are not repeated unnecessarily within the same sentence, such as, the very clumsy man did not know because he was clumsy. Or, he did not know what he needed to know. If a sentence is poorly structured, it is better to remove it or rephrase it. Also, avoid excessive word repetition within a single paragraph. Instead of repeating names, use personal pronouns like he or she, or refer to them by their title or profession. You may use colloquial language but ensure proper grammar and structure. A poorly worded sentence can be misunderstood or sound awkward. Readers come from different countries, and even if they speak Spanish, they may interpret things differently. Avoid mixing culture with language. If you use a local phrase, clarify it in parentheses or provide a synonym using or that is. When listing key points, center the title on the page and separate each point using numbers or letters. This document follows that format under guidelines for correcting grammatical errors. Quotes from books, other authors, or famous people should be placed in quotation marks and preferably italicized. Rules for using commas. The comma is a small punctuation mark often overlooked when writing, especially today when much of our communication happens through short messages that lack proper punctuation, accentuation, and spelling. If you want to remember when and how to use commas, take note of these common comma rules that many people neglect. We will also explain when commas are unnecessary and how overuse or omission can lead to humorous misunderstandings. Refresh your memory with these rules to ensure proper comma placement. You may realize that you often skip them. The next time you write a letter, email, report, or message, keep these guidelines in mind. 1. Use a comma in a list or enumeration. This is one of the most well-known comma rules. If you make a mistake here, you need to review punctuation rules carefully. Whenever you list items, use commas to create pauses between them. For example, I packed my bag with a swimsuit, sneakers, diving goggles, and a towel. The red, yellow, and orange paints are in the blue case. Pretty simple, right? Let's see if you use commas correctly in other cases. 2. Use a comma before a conjunction separating different ideas. You may ask, what are conjunctions? They include and, but, nor, or, for, so, yet, and others that connect two sentences or clauses. If the conjunction separates distinct ideas, you must use a comma. For example, I wanted to go to the beach to sunbathe, but it was cloudy. I entered the photography contest, and I lost. 3. Use a comma after introductory words. If you start a sentence with an adverb, transitional phrase, or introductory element, separate it with a comma. When using adverbs, place a comma if they introduce a sentence. For example, unfortunately, I had to sell my car. Finally, I passed the exam. However, you must keep studying. Likewise, it is essential to prepare for the test in advance. When the adverb appears in the middle of a sentence, place commas before and after it. For example, it was hot, however, we could not swim. Juan painted a spectacular picture, therefore, we will hang it on that wall. The day started stormy, that is, it threatened rain. Juan is an excellent teacher, but, above all, a great friend. 4. Use a comma when beginning a sentence with yes or no. When replying with an affirmation or negation, use a comma. For example, Yes, I will go to your party on Friday. No, I have not fixed your dress yet. 5. Use a comma when addressing someone directly, vocative use. A vocative is a noun used to get someone's attention or to refer to them. It must be separated from the rest of the sentence by a comma. For example, Oscar, go clean your room immediately. Girls, the snack is ready. I'd like to go out for dinner, Mom. When the vocative is in the middle of a sentence, place commas before and after it. For example, I am very happy, guys, with your hard work. 6. Use commas to set off non-essential information. When inserting additional information, also called an appositive or non-restrictive clause, use commas to separate it. For example, Christina, Sandra's sister, will come to lunch. Asthma, a respiratory problem that affects breathing capacity, can be managed with medication. 7. Use a comma when omitting a verb. Sometimes, you don't need to repeat a verb in similar phrases, as it is implied. In such cases, use a comma to clarify the meaning. For example, Ignacio is 3 years old, and Alejandro 3. I have been to Scotland 3 times, you none. Passengers with children, through that exit. 8. Use a comma between a city and a state or in an address. In this case, the comma helps to clearly specify a particular location. For example, I traveled to Timbuktu, Mali, 5 years ago. My full address is, Calle de los Arcos 840, Madrid 28001, Spain. 9. Use a comma to separate a negation in a sentence. If the negation occurs in the middle of the sentence, place a comma before and after it. If it happens at the end of the sentence, you only need 1 comma. To make the cake, I needed butter, not margarine. I will buy mushrooms, and not eggplant, to make the lasagna. When should you not use a comma? While some people have completely forgotten about commas, others overuse them. It would be a mistake to place a comma in the following cases. In each example below, the comma is unnecessary. 1. To separate the subject from the predicate. Example. The closet door was wide open. Incorrect, no comma is needed. 2. Between the subject and the verb. Example. Juan was very tired. Incorrect, remove the commas around was. 3. Between the verb and the predicate. Example. The number of people who own a mobile phone increased by 12%. Incorrect, no comma is needed before, by 12%. 4. When answering a question about, who, what, where, how, when, or how much. Example. The one running the fastest is your son. Incorrect, no comma is needed before, is your son. Mistakes when using a comma incorrectly. Both overuse and omission of commas can lead to sentences that completely change their meaning, sometimes in a humorous way. For example, let's eat kids without a comma in the vocative, it seems like we are about to eat children. Corrected version, let's eat, kids. The exhausted mountaineers returned to base camp. Without a comma, this suggests that all the mountaineers return. With a comma, the mountaineers, exhausted, return to base camp. Now, the sentence clarifies that only the exhausted mountaineers returned. No smoking flammable gas. Without commas, this implies that we are prohibited from smoking flammable gas, which is impossible. Corrected version, no smoking, flammable gas. Speak well to Juan about my Arturo. Without a comma, it sounds like someone is asking another person to speak positively about their Arturo. Corrected version, speak well to Juan about me, Arturo. Now, it's clear that Arturo is being addressed directly. Proper comma usage ensures clarity and prevents unintended, sometimes comical, misinterpretations. By applying these rules, you will improve the clarity and professionalism of your writing. Whether for literary works, articles, or everyday communication, proper punctuation ensures that your ideas are well structured and easily understood by your audience. Types of literary works. There are several types of literary works, each with its own characteristics and purposes. Some of the most common types include: novel, a long narrative that develops a complex plot with well-defined characters, settings, and conflicts. Novels can belong to various genres, such as historical fiction, science fiction, romance, detective fiction, and more. Short story, a brief narrative that usually focuses on a single incident or conflict. Short stories can have a wide range of tones, from fantastic to realistic, and are often used to convey lessons or reflections on life. Poetry, a genre characterized by the use of meter, rhythm, and musicality of language to express emotions, ideas, or vivid imagery in a concentrated and evocative manner. Drama, a literary form intended to be performed on a theatrical stage. Dramas often include dialogues between characters and explore emotional or social conflicts. Essay, a text that develops an idea or argument systematically and reflectively. Essays can cover diverse topics, from politics and philosophy to science or literature. Biography, a narrative that tells the life story of a real person, from birth to death, highlighting significant events, achievements, and important experiences. Autobiography, similar to a biography, but written by the person about their own life, often including personal reflections and intimate memories. Chronicle, a narrative that records historical events or current affairs in an objective and chronological manner, often with a journalistic approach. Fable, a short narrative, often featuring anthropomorphized animals or objects, that conveys a moral lesson at the end. Legend, a traditional story passed down through generations, often based on historical or mythological events, and may include fantastic or supernatural elements. Epic, a long narrative work that recounts the heroic deeds of a legendary character or a people, often written in verse. Fairy tale, fantastic stories that often include elements such as princesses, fairies, magic, and mythical creatures, usually conveying moral values or life lessons. Diary, a personal and daily record of an individual's thoughts, experiences, and emotions, which may be intended for private use or publication. Script, a written text specifically designed to be performed in audiovisual media, such as film, television, or theater, including dialogues, scene descriptions, and actions. Travel chronicle, a narrative documenting a traveler's experiences and observations while exploring different places, cultures, and landscapes. Letter, a written text addressed to a specific person or group, serving various purposes, such as expressing emotions, conveying information, or discussing ideas. Historical chronicle, a detailed account of historical events, often presented vividly and contextualized within their time and cultural setting. Aphorism, a brief and concise expression that communicates a universal idea or truth in a striking and memorable way. Tragedy, a dramatic work presenting serious conflicts and unfavorable outcomes for the main characters, often exploring profound themes such as fate, power, and morality. Comedy, a literary work intended to provoke laughter and entertainment through humorous situations, witty dialogues, and exaggerated characters. Mythology, a collection of stories explaining the origins of the world, gods, heroes, and legends of a particular culture, transmitted orally or through written texts. Manual or guide, a text providing detailed instructions on how to perform a practical, technical, or creative activity, such as cooking, repairing a car, or writing poetry. Memoirs, an autobiographical narrative focusing on the author's personal experiences and memories, often highlighting significant events in their life. Philosophical treatise, a text that deeply explores and analyzes philosophical ideas and concepts, presenting rational arguments and reflections on human nature and the universe. Epistle, a formal or informal letter addressed to a specific person or a broader audience. Covering various topics such as politics, religion, morality, or daily life. Literary essay, a text exploring literary topics, such as analysis of works, literary movements, writing styles, or the life and work of authors, using critical arguments and reflections. Urban legend, modern stories passed down orally or through media, often containing elements of mystery, horror, or the supernatural, aiming to explain unexplained phenomena or convey moral lessons. Comic or graphic novel, a form of visual storytelling that combines illustrations and text to narrate a story, often presented in sequential panels. Haiku, a short form of poetry originating from Japan, consisting of 3 verses with a 5-7-5 syllabic structure, capturing a fleeting moment in nature with simplicity and depth. Journalistic article, an informative or opinion-based text published in newspapers, magazines, or news websites, covering current events, public interest topics, or interviews with relevant figures. Microfiction, a very brief narrative form that tells a complete story in just a few lines or paragraphs, often leaving room for reader interpretation. Instruction manual, a text providing detailed information on how to use or assemble a product, perform a task, or follow a specific process, often including step-by-step instructions and diagrams. Academic article, a text presenting original research or critical analysis on a specific topic within an academic field, following established norms and conventions of the scientific community. Speech, a text meant to be delivered publicly, serving various purposes such as informing, persuading, inspiring, or commemorating, using effective and emotionally engaging language. These are some of the many types of literary works that exist, each with its own unique characteristics and forms of expression. Tones and writing styles used in a literary work. In a literary work, a variety of tones and writing styles can be used to convey different emotions, atmospheres, and messages. Here are some of the most common types of tones and styles. Formal, used in serious and professional contexts, this tone is characterized by sophisticated vocabulary, complete grammatical structures, and the absence of colloquialisms or slang. Informal, more relaxed and conversational, this tone uses everyday language and common expressions, often incorporating idioms and casual speech. Humorous, intended to provoke laughter and entertainment, this tone uses humor, sarcasm, and irony to create a light-hearted and fun atmosphere. Melancholic, used to convey sadness, nostalgia, or melancholy, this tone is marked by an emotional atmosphere and evocative descriptions. Poetic, characterized by beauty and musicality, this style of writing uses poetic imagery, metaphors, and rhythm to create an aesthetic experience for the reader. Satirical, used to criticize or mock individuals, institutions, or society as a whole, this tone is marked by sharp satire and keen social critique. Romantic, intended to evoke love, passion, and deep emotions, this tone uses emotional language, romantic descriptions, and sentimental gestures to create a romantic atmosphere. Comedic, similar to a humorous tone, this style focuses on provoking laughter through absurd situations, witty dialogues, and extravagant characters. Tragic, used to explore themes of pain, loss, and suffering, this tone is characterized by solemnity and a focus on human tragedy. Epic, used in grand-scale narratives, this tone is characterized by grandeur, heroism, and the depiction of legendary and epic events. Mysterious, this tone creates intrigue and suspense through evocative descriptions, enigmatic clues, and gradual revelations to keep the reader engaged. Realistic, used to faithfully depict everyday life and human experiences, this writing style focuses on accuracy and authenticity, using vivid details and natural dialogues. Surrealist, characterized by its focus on the irrational, the dreamlike, and the fantastic, this tone uses surreal images, strange metaphors, and nonlinear narratives to create a dreamlike or nightmarish world. Scientific, used in works that explore scientific and technological topics, this tone is marked by precision and objectivity, employing scientific terminology and detailed explanations to clearly convey information. Spiritual, intended to explore questions of faith, transcendence, and spiritual meaning, this tone uses religious metaphors, sacred symbols, and philosophical reflections to delve into spiritual and existential themes. Children's, aimed at a young audience, this tone uses simple and accessible language, relatable characters and situations, and a focus on imagination and fantasy. Philosophical, used to explore abstract ideas and concepts, this tone is characterized by intellectual depth, philosophical reflections, and an emphasis on existential and metaphysical questions. Historical, used in works set in past eras, this tone focuses on historical accuracy, detailed period recreation, and the exploration of historical events and figures. Atmospheric, this tone focuses on creating vivid settings and immersive environments, using sensory descriptions and evocative details to transport the reader to specific places and make them feel immersed in the story's world. Minimalist, characterized by conciseness and economy of words, this style of writing uses brief, direct sentences, leaving much to the reader's interpretation, creating a sense of intimacy and emotional depth. Absurd, defined by its focus on the illogical and irrational, this tone uses absurd situations, surreal dialogues, and bizarre humor to challenge conventions and reader expectations. Introspective, used to explore characters' thoughts, feelings, and inner experiences, this tone is marked by psychological depth, introspective reflections, and a focus on human complexity. Epic historical, this tone combines epic and historical elements, presenting legendary events and characters within a specific historical period. It is characterized by grandeur, heroism, and significant historical events. Ironic, used to highlight contradictions or hypocrisies in society or human behavior, this tone employs irony and sarcasm to subtly critique or mock certain attitudes or situations. Nostalgic, intended to evoke feelings of nostalgia and longing for the past, this tone uses evocative descriptions, emotional memories, and a melancholic tone to create a sense of loss and remembrance. Gothic, this tone is marked by a dark, mysterious, and supernatural atmosphere. It often includes elements such as castles, ruins, vampires, and ghosts to create a sense of terror and suspense. Fantastic, used in fantasy and magical works, this tone is characterized by boundless imagination, detailed fantasy worlds, and extraordinary magical creatures. Bucolic, this tone focuses on the representation of rural and pastoral life, using idyllic descriptions of nature, countryside life, and rural traditions to create a sense of peace and serenity. Disturbing, used to create a sense of discomfort and unease in the reader, this tone employs unsettling situations, eerie imagery, and an underlying sense of threat or danger to generate tension and suspense. Optimistic, intended to convey hope, joy, and positivity, this tone uses uplifting situations, inspiring characters, and a focus on human potential to create a sense of well-being and satisfaction. Surrealist, this style is characterized by its focus on the illogical and absurd, using surreal imagery and unconventional narratives to explore the subconscious and challenge reality. Minimalist, used to convey a lot with very little, this writing style is characterized by conciseness and word economy, using short and simple sentences to create a sense of intimacy and emotional depth. Spiritual, intended to explore questions of faith, transcendence, and spiritual meaning, this tone is characterized by its focus on spiritual and existential themes, using religious symbols and metaphors to explore the search for life's purpose. Situational comedy, this writing style focuses on comedic and absurd situations, using physical humor, misunderstandings, and entanglements to provoke laughter and entertain the reader. Narrative poetry, this style combines narrative prose with poetic elements, using evocative language, lyrical imagery, and rhythmic flow to create an aesthetic and sensory experience for the reader. Political satire, used to criticize or ridicule politics and society, this writing style is marked by sharp satire and keen social critique, employing irony and sarcasm to expose injustices and absurdities in the world. Magical realism, this style combines realistic elements with fantastic or magical ones, creating an atmosphere where the extraordinary coexists with the everyday, challenging the boundaries between reality and imagination. Intriguing, used to keep the reader on edge and engaged, this writing style is marked by suspense, mystery, and unexpected plot twists, keeping the reader guessing until the end. Epic comedy, This style combines epic and comedic elements, creating a grand and heroic story that is also humorous and entertaining, using humor and parody to subvert the conventions of the epic genre. Reflective, intended to provoke reflection and introspection in the reader, this writing style is characterized by philosophical depth and a focus on universal and existential themes, inviting the reader to question and explore their own life and beliefs. These various tones and writing styles allow writers to craft unique and engaging literary works that resonate with readers in different ways. Tips for writing a true story. If an author wishes to write a true story, here are some useful tips. Thorough research. Before starting to write, take time to research the events, people, and places that will be part of your story. The more information you gather, the more authentic and complete your narrative will be. Stay true to the facts. When writing a true story, accuracy is crucial. Avoid exaggeration or distorting the truth, as this could affect the credibility of your account. Consider perspective. Think about the point of view from which you want to tell the story. Will it be directly involved in the events from the perspective of a protagonist, or from a more objective and distant viewpoint? Develop complex characters. Even in a true story, characters are fundamental. Take the time to develop them, exploring their motivations, emotions, and internal conflicts. Balance facts with narrative. While staying true to the facts is important, it is also necessary to tell the story engagingly and compellingly for the reader. Find a balance between storytelling and factual accuracy. Be mindful of ethical considerations. When writing about real people and events, it's important to consider ethical implications and respect the privacy and dignity of those involved. Use narrative techniques. Even though you're writing a true story, you can use narrative techniques such as scene building, dialogue, and description to bring your account to life and maintain the reader's interest. Edit and revise carefully. After writing your story, take time to review and edit thoroughly. Verify the accuracy of the facts, improve the clarity and coherence of the text, and ensure the narrative flows effectively. Seek feedback. Before publishing your true story, get feedback from beta readers or other writers. Honest and constructive criticism can help you identify areas for improvement and refine your work. Maintain empathy and compassion. When writing about real-life events that may involve difficult or painful experiences, it's important to approach them with empathy and compassion. Treat your characters with respect and humanity. By following these tips, you can confidently and skillfully write a true story and share an authentic and meaningful narrative with your readers. Tips for writing a short story. Here are some tips for aspiring short story writers who wish to write their own book. Define your goal. Before you start writing, think about what you want to achieve with your story. Do you want to entertain, teach a lesson, evoke a specific emotion, or simply tell a great story? Choose an interesting theme. Pick a theme that fascinates or intrigues you. It could be something personal, a life experience, an everyday observation, or even a dream. Develop memorable characters. Create interesting characters that readers can relate to or empathize with. Give them distinct traits, clear motivations, and meaningful dilemmas to face. Establish a conflict. Every short story needs a central conflict that drives the action and keeps the reader engaged. This could be an internal struggle, an external obstacle, or a complicated situation. Structure your story. Decide on the structure of your narrative. Will you follow a traditional introduction, development, and conclusion format, or will you experiment with a more unconventional structure? Plan how your story will begin, develop, and end. Control the narrative pace. Maintain an appropriate rhythm by alternating moments of tension and calm. Use tension to keep the reader intrigued and calmer moments to develop characters and setting. Use descriptions and details. Describe settings, characters, and emotions in detail to bring your story to life in the reader's mind. Use the 5 senses to create a fully immersive experience. Be concise. In a short story, every word counts. Eliminate unnecessary parts and focus on telling your story in the most direct and effective way possible. Surprise the reader. look for ways to surprise your reader with unexpected twists, shocking revelations, or surprising endings that leave a lasting impression. Revise and edit. After writing your short story, take time to carefully revise and edit it. Check for grammatical errors, improve clarity, and ensure that the story flows coherently. By following these tips, you can craft a short story that captivates readers and transports them to new worlds and experiences. Tips for writing a science fiction novel. Here are some useful tips for writing a compelling science fiction novel. Research and familiarize yourself with the genre. Before writing, read widely within the science fiction genre to understand its conventions, themes, and common styles. This will help you create a solid and authentic novel. Build a coherent world. Science fiction often takes place in imaginary worlds or alternative futures. Take time to develop the setting of your novel, including technology, society, politics, and culture. Ensure everything remains consistent and believable within the rules of your fictional universe. Develop complex characters. Create three-dimensional, compelling characters who face moral dilemmas, technological challenges, or existential conflicts specific to the science fiction genre. Make sure your characters are well developed and that their motivations and actions are coherent within the story's context. Use science creatively. Incorporate scientific and technological concepts to drive your plot. Research current and futuristic scientific advancements and use your imagination to explore how these developments could impact society and your characters. Maintain a strong plot and pacing. Science fiction often involves complex plots with unexpected twists, fast-paced action, and reflective moments. Construct a solid storyline that keeps the reader engaged from beginning to end while maintaining a well-balanced pace. Explore relevant themes. Science fiction allows for the exploration of social, ethical, political, and philosophical themes in creative ways. Take advantage of this opportunity to address current or futuristic issues such as artificial intelligence, time travel, space colonization, genetic engineering dilemmas, and more. Be original and creative. Science fiction values originality and creativity. Don't be afraid to explore bold, innovative ideas and find unique ways to tell your story and surprise the reader. Revise and edit carefully. After writing your novel, dedicate time to thoroughly reviewing and editing it. Look for plot inconsistencies, improve textual clarity, and ensure all story elements are well integrated. By following these tips, you can craft a fascinating and captivating science fiction novel that transports readers to new worlds and challenges their imagination. Tips for writing a romance novel. If you want to dive into the romance novel genre, here are some tips. Create an emotional connection between characters. In a romance novel, the emotional bond between characters is essential. Take time to develop complex and realistic characters that readers can relate to and empathize with. Build romantic tension. Establish emotional tension between the protagonists from the beginning. Introduce obstacles and challenges that prevent them from being together, increasing reader engagement and intrigue. Develop a convincing plot. While love is the main theme, your novel also needs an engaging and well-developed plot. Include conflicts, unexpected twists, and moments of tension to keep the reader invested in the story. Use setting and atmosphere effectively. The setting can play a significant role in a romance novel. Create evocative and romantic environments that enhance the story's atmosphere and reinforce the characters' connection. Explore different types of love. Love can manifest in various ways. Explore different types of relationships, such as romantic love, familial love, friendship, and self-love, to add depth and variety to your story. Craft a satisfying ending. Ensure that the conclusion of your novel is fulfilling for both the characters and the reader. The ending can be happy, sad, or ambiguous, but it should resolve the main conflicts in a meaningful way. Use dialogue effectively. Dialogue is a powerful tool in a romance novel to develop relationships and reveal emotions. Use it to show the connection between characters, express their thoughts and feelings, and naturally advance the plot. Write with authenticity and sincerity. Sincerity and authenticity are key in romance novels. Write from the heart and be honest in your portrayal of relationships and emotions, making the story more impactful for readers. Revise and edit thoroughly. After writing your novel, take the necessary time to carefully revise and edit it. Look for inconsistencies in the plot, improve textual clarity, and ensure that the tone and style are consistent throughout the story. By following these tips, you can write a captivating and emotional romance novel that touches readers' hearts and makes them believe in the power of love. Tips for writing a drama. Writing a drama may seem simple, but it has its own set of rules. Understand your theme. Before writing, research and fully understand the central theme of your drama. Whether it's love, betrayal, loss, or another subject, ensure that you have a deep grasp of the emotional and psychological elements involved. Develop complex characters. Create three-dimensional characters with believable motivation and internal conflicts. Make them realistic and multifaceted, with strengths, weaknesses, and contradictory desires. Establish meaningful conflict. A good drama revolves around a central conflict that drives the story. Ensure the conflict is deep and impactful, with emotional ramifications that significantly affect your characters. Build authentic relationships. Relationships between characters are fundamental in drama. Take time to develop genuine and complex interactions, phrases to guide users through the steps they need to take. Include visual aids, utilize images, diagrams, and charts to complement written instructions and provide visual representations of concepts and procedures. Graphics can help clarify information and make it easier for users to follow. Ensure easy navigation. Organize content so that it is easy to navigate and search through. Use indexes, tables of contents, and bookmarks to help users quickly find specific information within the manual. Revise and edit carefully. After writing the manual, take the time to thoroughly review and edit the content. Check for spelling, grammar, or clarity errors, and ensure that the information is accurate and complete. Seek feedback. Before finalizing the manual, request feedback from potential users or students to identify possible areas for improvement. Consider their comments and make necessary adjustments to enhance the manual's quality and usability. Keep the manual updated. As procedures, technologies, or relevant information change, ensure the manual remains up to date. Periodically review the content and make necessary updates to maintain accuracy and relevance. By following these tips, you can create a clear, concise, and easy-to-understand instruction manual or guide that provides users or students with the information they need to achieve their goals effectively. Tips for writing a screenplay. Here are some practical tips for writing a compelling screenplay. Study the screenplay format. Before you start writing, familiarize yourself with the standard screenplay format. Learn about the three-act structure, the use of scene headings, dialogue, and scene descriptions to ensure your script adheres to industry conventions. Develop a strong premise. Begin with an interesting and original premise that has the potential to become an engaging and captivating film. Clearly define the central conflict, main characters, and theme of your story before you start writing. Structure your script properly. Divide your script into 3 main acts: setup, confrontation, and resolution. Ensure that each act has a clear purpose in the narrative and leads the story toward an exciting and satisfying climax. Create memorable characters. Develop complex, multifaceted characters who are interesting and believable. Ensure that each character has clear goals, internal motivations, and a significant character arc throughout the story. Use action and dialogue effectively. Balance visual action with meaningful dialogue to keep the audience engaged. Use realistic and natural dialogue that reveals information about the characters and advances the plot effectively. Set the scene vividly. Use detailed descriptions to create a visually engaging and immersive environment. Describe settings, atmosphere, and visual details precisely to transport the audience into your story's world. Build tension and suspense. Use pacing, structure, and unexpected twists to keep the audience intrigued and engaged. Gradually increase tension throughout the film and ensure there are enough conflicts and obstacles to maintain interest until the end. Revise and edit carefully. After writing your script, take the necessary time to review and edit each scene thoroughly. Look for plot inconsistencies, improve dialogue, and ensure the narrative structure is solid and coherent. Seek feedback. Before submitting your script to producers or directors, request feedback from colleagues or industry professionals. Use constructive criticism to refine and polish your script before presenting it for consideration. Stay persistent and passionate. Writing a screenplay can be a long and challenging process, but stay persistent and passionate about your project. Work hard, keep improving, and don't get discouraged by the obstacles you may encounter on the path to getting your script turned into a film. By following these tips, you can write a solid and compelling screenplay with the potential to become a successful movie. 10 Writing Tricks to Make Your Story Shine. You have the urge to write, and you want to start working on some ideas, but you're unsure where to begin. Here are 10 writing tricks that will help you shape your narrative from start to finish. We'll cover how to craft a strong opening paragraph, choose the right narrator, develop characters and settings, and handle essential aspects such as conflict, climax, and resolution. We'll also provide examples to help you grasp each concept. You can start applying these writing tricks to your work today, one at a time or all at once. 1. Before you begin writing, clarify the core elements of your story. Here are some fundamental questions to consider before starting your story, along with basic tips to guide you. Who is your protagonist, and what do they want? Remember, the athlete striving to win the big game or the accident survivor fighting to stay alive are not the only interesting character types. At the beginning of the story, what morally significant actions has your protagonist taken to achieve their goal? Morally significant doesn't mean the protagonist must be conventionally good, but they should have already made a conscious choice with consequences that drive the rest of the story. What unexpected consequences, directly related to the protagonist's efforts, increase the emotional energy of the story? Keep in mind that unexpected consequences will force your protagonist to make a new choice, which in turn will lead to further repercussions. What details of the setting, dialogue, and tone genuinely help tell the story? Don't hesitate to cut unnecessary elements, such as a character repeating something already described, or overly detailed travel scenes. What morally significant decision does your protagonist make at the climax of the story? While the reader should recognize this decision, it's best if they don't see it coming. Writing about emotionally charged experiences, such as winning an important game, recovering from illness or injury, or dealing with the death of a loved one, is appealing. However, describing strong emotions is not the same as evoking an emotional response in the reader. If you're looking for long-term writing strategies, consider these additional ideas. Keep a notebook. Notebooks serve as incubators, where you can store overheard conversations, expressive phrases, images, ideas, and observations about the world for later development. Write regularly, every day. Sit down and write for a couple of hours daily, even if you don't feel like it. Collect stories from those around you. Pay attention to stories people share and use them for inspiration. Analyze their underlying meanings and apply them to better understand human nature. Read, and read. Read all of Chekhov. Then read him again. Read Raymond Carver, Ernest Hemingway, Alice Munro, and Tobias Wolff. If you don't have time for all of them, at least stick with Chekhov, he'll teach you more than any writing workshop ever could. 2. Write a strong opening paragraph. Now that we've covered some preliminary writing tips, let's focus on crafting a compelling first paragraph that draws the reader in. In today's fast-paced world, your first sentence needs to grab the reader's attention with an unusual or unexpected action or conflict. Otherwise, you risk losing their interest before they even finish the first lines. This is why your story should start with tension, energy, and suspense. Keep in mind that short stories should begin close to their ending. Now, let's look at some examples. Incorrect example. I heard my neighbor scream through the wall. This opening is undoubtedly uninteresting. Correct example. Our neighbor in the back practices scream therapy in the shower almost every day. This sentence, however, immediately captures the reader's attention. Who is this man who screams in the shower every day? Why does he do it? What exactly is scream therapy? This intriguing setup encourages the reader to keep reading. The first time I heard him, I stayed in the bathroom, which shares a wall with his, listening for 10 minutes and debating whether I should call the police. This was very different from what my neighbors in my previous apartment used to do, a middle-aged couple with 2 kids. The rest of the paragraph introduces an internal conflict in which the protagonist hesitates about taking action, prompting the reader to wonder, did they call the police or not? It also presents an intriguing contrast between the past and present, allowing us to learn more about the protagonist. They have recently moved, while raising further questions. Why did they move? It's essential to understand and clarify the basic elements of a story before bringing them together into a cohesive whole. This process is similar to cooking a delicious dish. Every ingredient affects the final outcome. To create a perfect dish, one must balance the ingredients, consider cooking time, and ensure a well-presented final product. The same applies to writing fiction. And as an example, one of the most striking opening lines in literature. The beginning of Chronicle of a Death Foretold by Nobel Prize-winning author Gabriel Garcia Marquez. On the day they were going to kill him, Santiago Nassar got up at 5:30 in the morning to wait for the boat carrying the bishop. Here are 7 aspects to work on if you want to write a strong first chapter. 3. Develop your characters. In addition to writing an opening paragraph that grabs the reader's attention and encourages them to keep reading, how you develop your characters is equally important. They drive the action, so you must start working on them from the very beginning. A writer's real job is to create complex personalities and place them in a setting, then make them talk, suffer, think, love, laugh, and, ultimately, live within the duration of the novel or short story. What they do might carry a meaning beyond the temporary circumstances, allowing, in Chekhov's words, a glimpse into what it means to be human. To develop a living character with depth and authenticity, you need to gather more information than what will ultimately be used in the story. Here's a partial list of details to consider when crafting your characters. Character profile sheet. Name. Age. Occupation. Physical appearance. Place of birth. Current residence. Pets. Hobbies. Religion. Marital status. Family background. Temperament. Friends. Quirks. Failures. Secrets. Illnesses. Example character development. Let's say we want to develop the character of a university student. What should we know about her? Her name is Carol, short for Carolina Perea. She is 21 years old. She was born in Valencia, Spain, but now lives in Madrid. She has fair skin, brown eyes, and long brown hair, though she dyes it red. She is 5 feet 7 inches tall. She is quiet and shy. She loves cats and has one named Cafe. She rides a bicycle and enjoys photography. She shares an apartment with 2 other students, Isabel and Maria. She is studying biological sciences. She is single and does not have a boyfriend. She loves Spanish omelets and black tea. She bites her nails when nervous. Her mother recently committed suicide. Why is this important? Imagining all these details helps you understand your character, making their actions, dialogues, and reactions more believable in your narrative. However, not all this information needs to be explicitly included in the text, especially in a short story. The reader only needs to grasp 4 essential aspects of a character. Appearance provides the reader with a visual understanding of the character. Action, the reader learns more about the character through their actions rather than a list of adjectives. Personality, develop their personality as if they were a real person, including their way of speaking. A character's nature should be evident not just from their actions but also from how they express themselves. Thoughts, lead the reader into your character's mind, revealing unspoken memories, fears, and hopes. Above all, prioritize naturalness. Always keep in mind Chekhov's advice. In real life, people don't commit suicide, get hanged, fall in love, or say brilliant things every minute. Most of the time, they're drinking, or talking nonsense. Life on stage should be as it is in reality, and people, therefore, should walk naturally and not on stilts. 4. Choose the narrator. Once you have a clear idea of the story you want to tell and have developed the characters, you must decide which narrator to use in your narrative. As a writer, it's essential to determine who will tell the story and how much information you will provide to the reader throughout the narrative. You also need to decide whether the narrator is directly involved in the action, offering a subjective account, or if the narrator remains objective, simply reporting events. There are 3 main types of narrators. First-person narrator. The story is told from the I perspective. The narrator can be the protagonist, the main character directly affected by the events. A secondary character who recounts the story centered around the protagonist. This is a great option for beginner writers because it is easier to write. Example. I saw a tear roll down his cheek. I had never seen my father cry. I looked away while he discreetly wiped his face. A first-person narrator creates a special connection between the narrator and the reader, as it allows the reader to experience the character's perceptions firsthand. However, this perspective may limit the reader's ability to connect with other characters in the story. Second-person narrator. The story is told directly to you, the reader. The you can be a character who participates directly in the story. An observer to whom the events are narrated. A well-known example of this is 5 Hours with Mario by Miguel Delibes. Example. You laughed out loud at the clown's act, clapping with joy. The second-person perspective enhances the reader's sense of involvement, making them feel like they are part of the action. However, it's crucial to establish a tangible setting and avoid omitting essential details needed for the reader to clearly visualize the scenes. Third-person narrator. The story is told from an he or she perspective. However, the narrator can also be an animal, object, or imaginary being. Limited third person, the story is told from the perspective of one character. Omniscient third person, the narrator knows everything about all characters, their thoughts, and their motivations. Example. She ran toward the car, dodging pedestrians on the sidewalk. The omniscient third-person narrator allows for a deep exploration of all characters' thoughts and motivations. However, transitioning between different characters requires careful handling. On the other hand, the limited third-person narrator is great for providing a focused perspective, but you must be mindful of how to present information that the limited narrator wouldn't naturally know. Final considerations. The narrator can take a side in the story's conflict. Remain completely neutral and impartial. Encourage the reader to question a particular viewpoint that aligns with the author's intention. 5. Write meaningful dialogue. After creating the characters who will drive your story, the next step is crafting dialogues that are meaningful and contribute to the development of the narrative. Dialogue consists of what characters say to each other, or to themselves. Each character's speech should have its own paragraph for clarity. Include not only what is said but also the character's actions while speaking. To avoid confusion, properly mark the narrator's comments, distinguishing them from the character's speech. In English, quotation marks are used, but in Spanish, the dash is standard. Example of a confusing dialogue. Where are you going? Asked Juan nervously. Shopping, replied Maria as she walked toward the door. Not again. He stood in front of her to block her way. You've maxed out the credit card. This paragraph is confusing because it lacks a clear structure and does not separate the narration from the dialogue properly. Corrected version. Where are you going? Juan asked nervously. Shopping, Maria replied as she walked toward the door. Not again. He stepped in front of her, blocking her path. You've maxed out the credit card. This version is structurally correct because each character's dialogue is in its own paragraph, ensuring clarity. Avoid redundant narrative tags. Unnecessary dialogue tags, e.g., "one asked nervously," should be avoided when the character's emotions can be inferred through actions. Instead of, "Where are you going?" one asked nervously. Try, "Where are you going?" one stood up. Or, "Where are you going?" one mumbled, staring at his shoes. These variations show, rather than tell, one's nervousness without explicitly stating it. Key takeaways. Use subtle details to convey emotions. Avoid over-explaining, example, "one asked nervously, looking at his shoes." Allow the reader to infer emotions rather than stating them outright. Strike a balance between being too detailed and too vague. Remember, readers complete the story in their minds. If you explain everything in excessive detail, you take away their imagination and engagement, which might make the story less interesting. 6. Work on setting. Another crucial aspect of storytelling is creating the right atmosphere for your narrative. The setting includes time, when does the story take place? Place, where does it happen? Context, what circumstances surround the events? Atmosphere, what emotions and sensations do the setting evoke? A compelling atmosphere is one that organically blends with the story's elements. How to build a strong setting. From the beginning, it should be clear that your characters exist within a specific place and time. A good exercise is to visualize your characters in different locations, a desert, a jungle, or a suburban neighborhood. This helps create a cohesive balance between the characters' development and the space they interact with. Examples of setting descriptions. The damp alley smelled of stale beer and rotting wood. Somewhere in the distance, a neon sign flickered erratically, barely illuminating the graffiti-covered walls. The sun-baked sand stretched endlessly toward the horizon, its golden ripples shifting with each breath of wind. The distant cry of a falcon broke the eerie silence of the desert. Why does setting matter? It influences the character's actions and emotions. It creates immersion, making the world feel real. It enhances the tone of the story. A good setting doesn't just describe a place, it sets the stage for the story's events and emotional impact. By carefully crafting your setting, you allow readers to fully experience the world you've created. For key aspects to keep in mind. When crafting a compelling setting, always remember to balance setting, characters, and plot. These three elements influence one another and should be harmonized throughout the story's development. Include only meaningful details. Provide enough details to help the reader visualize the scene, but avoid excessive, unnecessary descriptions. Example, instead of detailing every step Maria takes to get on her bicycle, closing the door, walking through the patio, opening the garage, etc., focus on what truly matters. She rides into the street without looking and doesn't see the car speeding toward her. Engage multiple senses in descriptions. Writers often focus solely on sight, but a strong setting includes smells, sounds, textures, and even tastes to create a richer experience. Create sensations, not overload with facts. Instead of giving the reader abstract details like climate statistics or precise distances, offer vivid descriptions that allow them to experience the environment as the characters do. A great example of an immersive atmosphere is this passage from The Road by Cormac McCarthy. When it was light enough, he examined the valley through the binoculars. Everything fades into darkness. The soft ash swept over the asphalt in scattered swirls. He studied what he could see. Segments of the road between the dead trees below. Searching for something with color. Some movement. Some signs of static smoke. He lowered the binoculars, removed the cotton mask covering his face, rubbed his nose with the back of his wrist, and looked again. He sat there holding the binoculars, watching as the ashen daylight congealed over the land. He only knew that the boy was his warrant. And he said, if he is not the word of God, then God never spoke. 7. Take care of the plot. Previously, we discussed balancing setting, characters, and plot. But what exactly is the plot? The plot is the sequence of events in your story. It's what happens and how the writer structures the action, places turning points, and develops the characters. In short, the plot is a series of deliberately organized events designed to convey dramatic, thematic, and emotional meaning. Understanding the key elements that make up a story will help you craft compelling narratives for your next novel or short story. Key elements of a strong plot. Hook, an exciting event or compelling problem that immediately grabs the reader's attention. Conflict, the protagonist faces either an internal struggle or an external obstacle. Exposition, essential background information is needed to place the characters and actions in context. Complication, one or more problems that prevent the protagonist from easily achieving their goal or resolving the conflict. Transition, scenes, descriptions, or dialogues that serve as a bridge between one event and another. Flashback, a brief recall of a past event that influences the present action. Climax, the peak of the story's tension, the most intense and pivotal moment. Anticlimax, a moment when tension declines after the climax. Resolution, the conclusion where the conflict, whether internal or external, is finally resolved. Struggling to develop a plot? Try brainstorming. If you're unsure how to develop your plot, brainstorming is a great tool. Make a list of possible situations that could arise from a given scenario. Example scenario, a man's wife tells him she is leaving him. What could happen next? The man throws himself into his work. Their children decide they want to live with their mother. They have to sell their house. The wife returns, and the husband accepts her back. The wife returns, but the husband refuses to take her back. The man moves back in with his parents. The man commits suicide. The possibilities are endless. Choose the one that most intrigues you and start developing it. Once you've selected your main story, brainstorm again to explore potential developments. 8. Develop the conflict. As mentioned earlier, conflict is the heart of any story, it's the central force that drives the plot. Without conflict, there is no tension, and without tension, there is no compelling narrative. Conflict generates the tension that propels the plot forward. It arises from opposition between the protagonist and either internal struggles or external forces. By carefully balancing the opposing forces of conflict, you will keep readers turning pages, eager to see how the story unfolds. Why is conflict so important? Conflict is the core of fiction because struggles, challenges, and dilemmas are what make stories engaging. For this reason, writers should center their stories around significant, universal conflicts related to life's fundamental issues. Birth, love, sex, work, death. Common types of conflict. Protagonist versus another character, example, rivalry, betrayal, revenge. Protagonist versus nature or technology, example, survival, apocalypse, artificial intelligence. Protagonist versus society, example, oppression, political corruption, rebellion. Protagonist versus God or fate, example, existential struggles, divine justice. Protagonist versus themselves, example, self-doubt, moral dilemmas, addictions. What makes a conflict engaging? A well-developed conflict should include these essential elements. Mystery. Reveal just enough to intrigue readers, but never lay out everything too soon. Keep them guessing and wanting more. Fairness. Show both sides of the conflict. Present multiple perspectives, rather than making one side purely good and the other purely evil. Escalation. Gradually increase the intensity of the conflict. Introduce new obstacles or higher stakes as the story progresses. Causality. Unlike real life, in fiction, actions have consequences. Bad decisions often lead to punishment, and heroic actions often lead to reward. Surprise. Make the plot complex enough so that readers don't predict everything too early. Avoid clichés, keep them engaged with unexpected twists. Empathy. Encourage readers to identify with the protagonist, the setting, and the situations. If readers care about the characters, they will care about the conflict. Insight into human nature. A great story reveals something profound about human behavior, psychology, or emotions. Universality. Even if your story is unique, its central conflict should be meaningful to most readers. People should be able to relate to the emotions and struggles behind it. Significance. Convince the reader that the conflict matters. Trivial conflicts lead to trivial fiction, make sure your conflict has real stakes. Final thought, conflict is the engine of your story. By carefully crafting, intriguing, layered, and meaningful conflict, you ensure that your story has the tension and stakes necessary to captivate readers. Without conflict, there is no suspense. Without suspense, there is no reason to keep turning the pages. So, as you develop your story, ask yourself: what is the main conflict? How does it escalate? Why should readers care? Once you have strong answers, your story will be well on its way to success. 9. Build the climax. We've just discussed conflict as the driving force of the plot. Now, that conflict must develop until it reaches a climax, the high point of the story where a crisis occurs, leading the narrative toward its resolution. The climax is the turning point, the most exciting and dramatic moment in the story. This crisis could take the form of recognition. The protagonist realizes something they didn't understand before. Decision, they determine what must be done to resolve the conflict. Resolution, they finally take action. Why every story needs a crisis. A compelling story needs a crisis. However, simply throwing in a random event, such as a car accident or a sudden illness, isn't enough unless it generates conflict that engages the reader with the characters. Timing the climax correctly. Too soon. Readers will expect another turning point. Too late. Readers will get impatient and feel the protagonist is too slow to act. How to write a powerful climax. Always present the climax as a scene. This is the moment the reader has been waiting for. Avoid revealing the crisis through dialogue alone. This is a moment of introspection, where the protagonist undergoes self-recognition and self-analysis. Show internal change. Reveal the protagonist's thoughts, emotions, and moral struggles, making it clear how everything they've been through has shaped their final decision. The climax should create a clear shift in the protagonist, setting up the resolution. 10. Writing the resolution. Now we've reached the final step, the resolution of the story. This is where the conflict is resolved, one way or another. However, the resolution does not need to be absolute. Sometimes, it's enough to show that the characters have started to change or that they are seeing things differently. This approach is common in short fiction, where space constraints make it difficult to provide a complete resolution. Types of endings. Open ending, the writer presents an unfinished resolution, leaving the readers to complete the story in their own minds. Resolved ending, the story has a clear and definitive conclusion. Circular ending, the protagonist finds themselves in a situation similar to where they started, creating a sense of repetition or fate. Monologue ending, the story closes with the protagonist reflecting on events, evaluating how the resolution has changed them. Dialogue ending, a conversation between characters concludes the story, often reflecting on past events and opening new perspectives. Literal image ending, a description of a person, setting, or situation serves as the final image, symbolizing the conclusion. Symbolic image ending, like the literal image, but instead of describing something directly, it represents the themes and meaning of the ending allegorically. Each story demands its own kind of ending. The key is to choose the resolution style that best fits the narrative. Advice for new writers. I was once a new writer. I know I can't go back in time to talk to my younger self from 30 years ago, but perhaps I can share some of my experience with today's new creative minds. Follow me through this simple and ordinary story, the journey of a young Latin American writer of fantasy, horror, and science fiction. My beginnings in writing. Many years ago, I started writing. Looking back almost 3 decades, I can confidently say I wrote my first complete short story in 1991. I remember the excitement I felt as I saw the story flow from my pencil onto the notebook pages. At 13 years old, I had already been writing short stories in notebooks and journals for years, mostly loose ideas rather than fully developed narratives. Key advice for new writers. 1. Read a lot, and read everything. Reading is the foundation of writing. Expose yourself to different genres, styles, and perspectives, from classic literature to contemporary fiction, poetry to non-fiction. Every book you read adds to your creative arsenal. 2. Write consistently, even when your ideas don't seem perfect. Write all the time, even if your ideas feel incomplete. Your stories never reach the end. Your writing doesn't sound great yet. The act of writing itself is what improves your skill over time. 3. Find your writing method. Some writers prefer to plan their plot and characters in advance. Discover the story organically while writing. Combine both approaches. There is no right or wrong method, just find what works for you. 4. Develop your themes and voice. Over the past 2 decades, I have developed my unique voice as a writer, not just in style, but in the themes I explore and how I approach them. My work often revolves around moral, political, and social issues, reflected in stories about ordinary people in extraordinary situations. Knowing your strengths and weaknesses. If you write fantasy, horror, and science fiction, but I like to be more specific. Urban fantasy. Everyday horror. Dystopias with happy endings. These are the genres I feel most comfortable with, as they allow me to explore relevant themes with an intimate, almost localized perspective. However, I also know my limits, biases, and weaknesses. It's crucial to understand what you're good at, but it's even more important to recognize where your skills are lacking. This self-awareness helps avoid unnecessary frustration. In summary. White heavy checkmark read a lot, and read everything. White heavy checkmark write constantly, no matter what. White heavy checkmark find your personal writing method. White heavy checkmark practice your themes and develop your unique voice. Writing is a journey, and the more you write, the more you grow. Keep going, keep learning, and never stop creating. 11 Writing Tips from Ray Bradbury for Beginners. The author of Fahrenheit 451 offers various recommendations for aspiring writers, including, don't start by writing novels. American writer Ray Bradbury, 1920 to 2012, is one of the most celebrated authors of the 20th century. Known for The Martian Chronicles, 1950, and Fahrenheit 451, 1953, his work in science fiction has been so acclaimed that an asteroid was named after him. At a 2001 Writers' Symposium hosted by Point Loma Nazarene University, Bradbury shared insights from his life and writing experience that can help anyone dream of creating their own literary work. Here are his top 11 writing tips. 1. Start with short stories. According to Bradbury, it's a mistake to begin by writing novels. The problem with novels is that you can spend a year writing one, and it might not turn out well because you still haven't learned how to write. Instead, he recommends writing a large number of short stories. Even if they aren't great, they serve as practice. I challenge you to write 52 bad short stories. You won't be able to. After so many attempts, a great story will surely emerge. 2. Don't try to imitate your favorite authors. Bradbury admits that one of his early mistakes as a writer was trying to mimic the authors he admired, such as Jules Verne, Arthur Conan Doyle, and H. G. Wells. You can love them, but you can't beat them. The key is to develop your own voice rather than copying others. 3. Learn from the masters of short stories. Bradbury recommends studying great short story writers such as Roald Dahl, Guy de Maupassant, John Cheever, Nigel Neal, Edith Wharton, John Collier. However, he advises against focusing too much on modern stories, particularly those from The New Yorker, claiming that they lack metaphor and only portray everyday life. 4. Fill yourself with metaphors. Bradbury saw himself not as a natural novelist but as a collector of metaphors. To build a strong metaphorical toolbox, he suggests a daily routine. Read one short story. Read one poem. Read one essay on any topic. He particularly recommends George Bernard Shaw. By doing this, you'll fill your head with ideas and metaphors, which, when combined with your perspective and life experiences, will generate new ideas and stories. 5. Distance yourself from people who don't believe in you. If there are people in your life who mock your desire to be a writer, Bradbury advises. Call them today and say goodbye. Surround yourself with supportive, creative people instead. 6. Visit the library frequently. Bradbury never attended college, he couldn't afford it. Instead, he spent 10 years visiting the library 3 to 4 times a week, saying, "I graduated from the library." His advice? Live in the library, not on your computer. 7. Fall in love with movies. From a young age, Bradbury was a devoted moviegoer. He believed that watching classic films was an excellent way to stimulate the imagination and expand storytelling skills. 8. Write for fun. Writing shouldn't feel like a chore. Write with joy. If writing a story starts to feel like work, throw it away and do something else. If you get stuck in the middle of a story, your subconscious is telling you that it doesn't like what you're doing. 9. Forget about making money. Throughout his career, Bradbury turned down large sums of money for projects he wasn't interested in. "I knew that if I wrote something just for money, it would destroy me. My wife and I were 37 years old when we could finally afford our first car." The lesson? Write what you love, not what you think will sell. 10. Make 2 lists. Bradbury suggests making 2 lists. White heavy checkmark a list of 10 things you love passionately, write about them. White heavy checkmark a list of 10 things you hate, write about them and destroy them in your stories. Write about the people you despise, your fears, your nightmares, and kill them on the page. 11. Write whatever comes to mind. Bradbury rarely planned his stories in advance. "Whenever I start writing, I never know where I'm going. All my books have been surprises." He recommends starting by freewriting, just letting words flow. If you're lucky, by the second page, characters will start to emerge, straight from your true essence. By doing this, you'll discover things about yourself that you never knew existed. You won't know what's inside you until you test it. Final thoughts. Bradbury's advice is timeless. Read constantly, especially great short stories and poetry. Write regularly. Short stories are the best practice. Find your own voice, don't imitate others. Immerse yourself in storytelling, through books, movies, and life experiences. Write with passion and joy, not for money or approval. By following these principles, you'll not only become a better writer but also discover your unique storytelling voice. 10 Writing Tips from Stephen King. Are you terrified of clowns, demonic dogs, and hotel hallways where strange spirits try to drive you insane? We owe all of this to Stephen King, one of the most prolific horror writers of all time. In addition to giving us unforgettable stories and new irrational fears, he shared his best advice for aspiring writers in his book on writing. Rather than a grammar manual or a set of strict rules, On Writing provides a unique perspective on the challenging craft of writing. Here, we've selected King's 10 best writing tips, ones that will help turn writing your book into the dream you've always imagined, rather than the nightmare that appears every time you open a blank document. Ready to conquer your fears and start writing? 1. First, write for yourself. Then, worry about the audience. For King, the author tells the story to themselves first. Then, during revision, they must ensure that the story keeps the reader engaged. This often means making difficult decisions, deleting entire pages, removing characters, or even starting over. 2. Don't obsess over perfect grammar. The goal of fiction isn't to show off perfect grammar, it's to immerse the reader in the story. The best writing makes the reader forget they are reading a book and feel what the characters experience. In King's case, that often comes with a good scare. 3. The magic is already in you. For King, fear is the root of bad writing. Believe that everything you need to be a great writer is already inside you. If it feels hard to find your writing magic, try some creative exercises to break out of writer's block. 4. Read, read, read. The best writers are always great readers. You need to read a lot to develop your own writing style. Without reading, you won't have the tools or experience to write your book. Thanks to ebooks, you can carry an entire library in your pockets, there's no excuse not to read. 5. Turn off the TV. Stephen King strongly believes that television is the last thing a writer needs. Instead of wasting time watching TV, use that time to read and write. If you want to be a great writer like King, say goodbye to the remote control. 6. You have 3 months. King is famous for his strict writing routine. For him, 3 months is enough to complete the first draft. Focus on finishing your story first, you can worry about revisions and editing later. 7. There are 2 secrets to success. King is known for staying out of scandals. He has said that a healthy life and a strong marriage are the 2 pillars of his success. These allow him to white heavy checkmark focus on his novels. White heavy checkmark be happy. White heavy checkmark live peacefully in Bangor, Maine. 8. Write 1 word at a time. When asked how he writes, King gave a simple answer. 1 word at a time. And he's absolutely right. Every story, whether it's a short tale like Cortázar's or a fantasy trilogy like Tolkien's The Lord of the Rings, is written word by word. 9. Discover your stories. King believes that stories are not products but hidden treasures waiting to be found. A writer's job is to discover them and bring them to light. Rather than forcing a story, let it reveal itself as you write. 10. Take a break. After finishing a draft, take some time away from it. When you return, you'll see the text with fresh eyes, almost as if someone else had written it. This distance will help you analyze it more objectively and spot necessary improvements. It's always easier to criticize someone else's work than your own, so give yourself that advantage. 11. Writing your book is about being happy. A true writer wants to enrich both their own life and the lives of others through stories. It's about waking up, feeling good, finishing what you start, and, above all, being happy. Many people dream of becoming a writer, but only those who are willing to put in the work, turning off the TV, researching, and facing the blank page, will succeed. Editing and publishing on Amazon. Step 1. Get the right tools. The first thing you need to do is acquire or purchase a new version of Microsoft Word, preferably from 2007 or later. Word helps correct spelling and grammar errors. I personally use Word 365 along with Grammarly, a tool that suggests grammar and style improvements. Grammarly offers a free version, which you can download online from their official website. However, since this tool isn't perfect, I will also share some general rules to help you edit your manuscript before publishing. Step 2. Create a free KDP account. Next, you need to open a free account on Amazon KDP, Kindle Direct Publishing. This is the self-publishing platform I use because it is white heavy checkmark affordable, white heavy checkmark simple, white heavy checkmark fast. I previously used Lulu, which is one of the oldest self-publishing platforms, but after the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020, they increased prices and changed their website interface. KDP and other self-publishing platforms distribute books globally through Amazon, Barnes & Noble, other online bookstores. With each sale, you can earn $5 plus per copy sold on Amazon, depending on the price of your book. Sales from other retailers, for example, Barnes & Noble, can earn you $1 or more per copy. Step 3. Formatting your book. You can practice formatting your book in Word, then convert it to PDF and upload it to KDP until it looks perfect. Recommended book sizes: 5 by 8. 5 inches, standard. 6 by 9 inches, popular for novels. 8 by 11 inches, for manuals or textbooks. Steps to publish on Amazon KDP. 1. Visit KDP and register. Go to www.kdp.amazon.com. Change the language, top right corner. Click Sign Up to create an account. If you already have an Amazon account, you can use the same login. If creating a new account, enter your name, your email, a secure password. Accept terms and conditions and confirm your email. 2. Log in and start your book. After signing in, go to your KDP library. Click Create a new title, where you will see 2 options: Kindle ebook, paperback book. I always start with the paperback version first, then convert it into an ebook later. You will need to fill in book title and subtitle, series name, if applicable, edition number, e.g., first edition, author name, co-authors or contributors, if any, description, summary of the book for readers, copyright information, confirm you own the rights, keywords, topics your book covers, categories, choose 2 relevant categories. ISBN, KDP provides a free ISBN for paperbacks. Kindle ebooks do not require an ISBN. 3. Prepare your manuscript. Before uploading, ensure your book is fully edited and formatted. White heavy checkmark numbered table of contents. White heavy checkmark proper margins and spacing. White heavy checkmark headers and decorative elements, if needed. White heavy checkmark saved as a PDF. Now, you can upload your PDF to KDP and prepare for publishing. Note: your book will not be published until you complete your banking and tax information, so Amazon can pay you via direct deposit. 4. Choose the book's specifications. Trim size: select your preferred size, e.g., 5 by 8, 5 or 6 by 9 inches. Interior color: choose white or cream pages. Cover finish: choose matte or glossy. If your book contains images, white pages are recommended for better print quality. 5. Upload your cover. Use KDP's Cover Creator tool to design a cover or upload your own custom cover, PDF format. If you already have a cover file with the front, back, and spine, ensure white heavy checkmark the barcode is included in the design or white heavy checkmark KDP generates a barcode for you. Check the option in Settings. For detailed cover design specifications, check KDP's Cover Guidelines. 6. Preview your book. Click Open Previewer to see how your book will look in print. If there are any formatting errors, KDP will highlight them on the left side. White heavy checkmark fix any issues, then approve the book once everything looks correct. Need help with your book cover or designs? If you need assistance designing a cover, you can contact Baute Production Publisher at telephone number 813-693-8879. On Telegram, Baute Production Publisher. Final steps before publishing. Once your book is approved, KDP will ask white heavy checkmark pricing options, white heavy checkmark royalty preferences, white heavy checkmark distribution preferences. After filling in these details, submit your book for final review. Once approved, your book will be available on Amazon. 8. Final approval of your book. After reviewing and approving both the cover and the interior, if no errors are detected, or if you receive an email notification about any issues, you can proceed to the next step. White heavy checkmark, click Save and Approve to finalize the review process. 9. Set the price and publish. Now, it's time to set the price of your book. Expanded distribution options, global availability. Once you confirm these details, KDP will automatically calculate your royalties, both from Amazon KDP sales and other online bookstores. Click Publish to make your book available. Publishing your Kindle ebook, optional but recommended. After publishing your paperback, KDP will offer you the option to publish a Kindle ebook. If you already have white heavy checkmark, your book is formatted as a KPF file, Kindle publishing format. White heavy checkmark, your front cover is ready in JPG format. You can now start the Kindle publishing process. Steps to upload your ebook. Since KDP already has your book's title, author, description, topics, and categories, you can skip re-entering that information and move directly to uploading your files. Cover options for ebooks. Use KDP's built-in cover creator. Upload your own cover, JPG or TIFF format. Uploading your files. Upload the KPF file, book interior. Upload the JPG file, ebook cover. Click Open Previewer to review the final result. Or simply click Save and Continue. Final details before publishing your ebook. ISBN and publisher information. Ebooks do not require an ISBN. If you don't use a publishing service, leave the publisher field blank. Set the price. Kindle ebooks cannot exceed $9. Choose your preferred royalty option, 35% or 70%. White heavy checkmark, click Publish to finalize the process. What happens next? Amazon KDP reviews all books within 24 to 72 hours. Once approved, your book will be available for purchase. If your book appears as draft, check your email for error notifications and fix any issues. Congratulations! You are now a published author. You've successfully edited, formatted, and published your book on Amazon KDP. Now, it's time to promote your book through social media, blogs, and ads. Monitor sales and reviews via your KDP dashboard. Plan your next project, because one book is just the beginning. End of the book. The author's biography. Milco Baute Lopez, a Cuban writer, editor, and educator, has woven a fascinating trajectory over the decades. His pen, infused with passion and creativity, has been a beacon of knowledge and artistic expression since 1992, when he began enlightening the world with his insightful articles. The most significant chapter of his life was written on December 10, 1995, when Milco crossed borders and oceans to settle in the United States. This land of opportunities became his new home, and in 2001, with a profound sense of belonging, he embraced U.S. citizenship, merging his Cuban roots with his love for cultural diversity. The pursuit of knowledge and wisdom has always been a constant in Milco's life. This passionate autodidact, eager to nourish his intellect, embarked on a remarkable academic journey. He studied philosophy through an online course offered by the University of Edinburgh in Scotland, and in 2016, he successfully completed his academic journey, becoming a graduate of this venerable institution. Milco Baute is not only an accomplished writer but also a prolific author. From 2008 to the present, he has given life to more than 70 books, showcasing his literary talent in both English and Spanish. In addition to his personal work, Milco plays a pivotal role in the publishing industry as an editor, writer, and distributor, collaborating with other authors to bring their stories to the world. One cannot fully grasp the rich palette of Milco's experiences without mentioning his technical background as a graduate in Cuba in 1986 as a technician in electrical power systems. This distinguished profession led him to practice his craft with skill for over 2 decades before his passion for writing and education led him down new paths. In summary, the life of Milco Baute Lopez is a symphony of creativity, perseverance, and dedication. His journey from the Cuban shores to the borders of the United States, through academic exploration and prolific literary production, is a testament to his unwavering spirit and commitment to cultural enrichment and knowledge in all its forms. Audiobook created by Baute Production Publisher. Tampa, Florida, United States of America. Telephone number, 813-693-8879. Email, authors@us.com.